All right, today we're going to dive into one of the oldest and honestly, one of the most profound stories ever told. It's a parable about faith, about suffering on a scale that's, well, it's hard to even imagine, and it gets right to the heart of divine justice. It all really starts with a question that, let's be real, everyone has asked at some point. Why do good people suffer? It's a question that just echoes through history. If the universe is supposed to be good or have some kind of order, why does life so often feel so chaotic and, frankly, so unfair? Well, the story we're exploring today doesn't just sidestep this dilemma. No way. It confronts it head on, and it offers an answer that is every bit as complex and unsettling as the question itself. So let's get into it. So our story kicks off, interestingly, not on Earth, but up in the heavens. There's this scene that sets up a kind of cosmic trial. And the subject of this whole trial, it's a single righteous man. Meet Job. Now, Job isn't just a good guy. He is literally the pinnacle of human integrity. The story calls him the greatest of all the men of the East. His life is stable, deeply rooted, like a tree planted by the water. He's got it all: a loving family, incredible wealth, and a faith that seems totally unshakable. So here's the heart of the whole conflict. You've got God, who basically points to Job and says, "See? Look at my servant Job. He's the real deal." But then this figure called the adversary steps forward with this incredibly cynical challenge. He argues that Job's faith isn't real. It's just a byproduct of his comfortable life. It's transactional. Take away all the blessings, the adversary wagers, and that faith will absolutely crumble into curses. And the wager is accepted. The protective hedge that was around Job's life is suddenly removed, and the test begins. And what happens next is a catastrophe of almost unbelievable proportions. The speed of the devastation is just shocking. It all happens in a single day, one disaster after another. First, raiders strike. Then, fire literally falls from heaven. And then the final, most crushing blow, a great wind collapses the house, and all of his children are gone. His entire world is just annihilated between sunrise and sunset. And this brings us to Job's first response, which is, well, it's absolutely staggering. He doesn't curse. He grieves, of course he does. He tears his robe, he shaves his head, but then he falls to the ground and he worships. The adversary's initial bet? Completely wrong. But the test isn't over. The adversary, he doubles down. He argues that a man will give up anything to save his own skin. So Job is struck with these agonizing sores that cover his entire body. His suffering becomes intensely personal, intensely physical. It's so bad that even his wife tells him to just give up, to curse God and die. Now, just when you think things cannot possibly get any worse, a whole new kind of suffering arrives. 3 of Job's friends show up, supposedly to comfort him. But their comfort? It quickly turns into this relentless psychological attack. At first, they just sit with him in silence for a whole week, which is powerful. But then they start to talk. And their logic is simple, it's rigid, and for Job, it's just agonizing. They believe in a perfectly just world where good is always rewarded and suffering is always a punishment for sin. So their conclusion is simple. Job's immense suffering must mean he's hiding some equally immense secret sin. But Job absolutely refuses to confess to a crime he didn't commit. He passionately defends his own integrity. And right in the middle of all this anguish and confusion, he utters this profound cry of faith, this belief that somehow, somewhere, a redeemer exists who will ultimately stand on his side and vindicate him. He knows he's innocent, and he basically demands his day in court with God. So, after all the human arguments are exhausted, after Job has made his desperate plea, an answer finally comes. But it is not the answer anyone, especially Job, was expecting. A voice speaks directly to him, not from some throne of judgment, but out of a wild, roaring whirlwind. This is so crucial. God doesn't answer Job's why. He doesn't explain the heavenly wager or anything like that. Instead, he completely turns the tables and starts questioning Job. The tone is just awesome, overwhelming, and it challenges the very foundation of Job's human-centered view of the world. God starts by taking Job on this tour of the cosmos, posing one unanswerable question after another. He points to things that are completely outside of human control, completely outside our understanding, like the weather. The point here isn't to make Job feel small, but to radically expand his perspective. The cosmic tour continues, on up into the heavens. Can you command the stars, Job? Can you manage the constellations? What God is doing is showing him a universe that is so vast, so ancient, and operates on a wisdom that is just far beyond our simple human ideas of justice. And then, God points to these two enormous, untamable creatures, Behemoth and Leviathan. They're symbols of the raw, chaotic power that exists in creation. Power that was never designed for human comfort or for human control. The world, God reveals, wasn't made solely for us. Faced with this incredible cosmic vision, Job's entire perspective just shatters. And then it gets remade. And this builds to the story's really powerful conclusion. Now, the nature of Job's repentance is the key to this whole thing. He doesn't suddenly remember some secret sin he committed. No. He repents for his ignorance, for thinking he could understand the mind of God, for trying to judge the entire universe from his tiny, limited viewpoint. This admission is the story's true turning point. And then comes this huge, incredible reversal. God actually calls out the friends. Their neat, tidy, pious theology was just wrong. He says they haven't spoken what is right. But Job, the guy who was messy and honest and screamed his agonizing questions into the void, he was the one who spoke rightly. God vindicates the honest struggle over the false certainty of just having a religious formula. And in the end, after Job actually prays for the very friends who accused him, his life is restored. He gets twice the wealth he had before, and he's blessed with a new family. His faithfulness through that all-consuming fire is honored and rewarded. So you see, the story of Job doesn't give us a simple answer to why good people suffer. What it suggests is that true faith isn't about having all the answers or living a life that's totally free of pain. Instead, it asks us to trust in a wisdom that's way beyond our own understanding. And it leaves us with this really profound question. Is a faith that cannot be tested truly faith at all?